host of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. Our guest this evening, I'm glad to say, what he thinks about that. Colonel Davis, thanks for joining us. Will President Trump release the Epstein files? And does it matter if he does or he doesn't?
I honestly, I have been tracking that situation very closely, but I think like so many things, it's really a lot of politics one way or the other. I'm all about truth. I would love it if he released everything, that's not have a genuine national security classifications, whether it's that or the JFK files. I'd like to see all of those be released. You can't claim anything about national security on that. But these things are political, and we'll have to see how it actually shakes out. But I'm all about truth, actually.
Now, how's the confirmation process beginning to look? Trump made a number of nominations, some of whom have fallen even before the first hurdle. Matt Gaetz, for example, fell before he got to the first fence, and there have been others. Kash Patel might be lucky to get the nod as head of the FBI. There's people going to oppose even Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. What's the lay of the land on all that?
Yeah, honestly, I think that Tulsi Gabbard is maybe the biggest hurdle that there is for the Trump administration, and the biggest lightning rod for this whole issue, because there's so many in Washington, and unfortunately some even in Trump's inner circle, that are still basically unrecounted neocons, that are still kind of Warhawks, and they're trying to put on Trump clothes to try and to get in there. And those guys seem to be having a lot easier time of it. But those like Tulsi Gabbard, and I think that that's the most important one in my personal opinion, because she is absolutely, all the time she was a Democrat, she was absolutely about what is right and what is true, and that's what she stood up for, no matter what the party said. And then now that she, of course, left the Democratic Party, and she has just recently joined the Republican Party, and she has absolutely stood very firm for her entire career, and now that she will tell the truth about what is going on. She will faithfully convey the actual intelligence to the president, part of his presidential daily brief. So the position is incredibly important. And these people do not want her in there. There have been a number of articles where, so-called high-ranking Republican senators, leaked information out. But when you look at what was actually released out, it's basically innuendo and accusations with no evidence. They say she's pro-Russian. They say, she coddles up to dictators, Bashar al-Assad in 2014, I think it was, 2015. 2017, I'm sorry. But anyone who's, and if you look at what she said, then at the time, she said she just wanted to talk about anything she could do to bring peace to that violent situation there, to help the people of Syria out. You had John Bolton, one of the worst neocons in America. He's completely against her, and he actually lies about her in public by saying she made this video once where she justified the Russian invasion of Ukraine because of some biolabs or something like that. When you watch the actual video that Tulsi Gabbard made, all she was saying was there are American biolabs there, and we need to secure all those toxins and everything else, whatever they're doing, needs to be secured so it doesn't get out in an active war zone. Something very, very reasonable. But they twist that and say she gave justification, which she didn't do. That tells you all you need to know, that the John Bolton types want to do everything they can to make sure nobody who's going to tell the truth and accurate information to the president, they want them out of the way, because all they want is somebody like John Bolton who will tell the president, yeah, go to war, use force here, and selectively put the intelligence to make it look like we ought to take military action. So I think it is vital for Trump to make sure that she does get confirmed, and if he needs to, bend a few elbows on some of his Republican colleagues, I think he needs to do it.
Well, he'd be a fool not to. I mean, he has to stamp his authority on the new Congress that presumably will come into office at the same time as him, unless I've got that constitutionally wrong, because he can't get into a situation where these rhinos, and there's still quite a few of them around, are frustrating his presidential program. After all, they were all elected on his coattails.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, and I think part of the reason why you can see why she's the perfect fit. I actually, full disclosure, I've known Tulsi for quite a number of years, and I texted her the other day and told her my wife and I were praying for her, talking, obviously observing how everybody's bringing out the knives, trying to get her. And she says, I appreciate that, but she says, listen, they will fail. We will get this through. And she has incredible confidence that she's going to be confirmed. And then you saw right after that, you saw that President Trump took her and just a handful of other people to an Army-Navy football game that was held to make sure that everybody sees she's in his inner circle. And I think she's going to be right. I think she's going to end up getting confirmed.
So the Wall Street Journal tells us that contrary to what all the media told us before, Joe Biden is gaga and has been since the beginning. How are Americans reacting to that, Colonel?
I'm sorry, I actually didn't catch it. Gaga about what? I missed that.
Well, the Wall Street Journal has revealed, gaga might not cross the Atlantic, has revealed that Joe Biden's been senile since the first day of his presidency, that this malaise is not something that just crept up on us and had to see him removed as a matter of urgency. As a matter of fact, they've all been concealing his madness from us all along.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that just objectively speaking, when you saw from, say, January of this year all the way up to June, you had one Democratic leader after another literally reading from the same script saying, oh, he is sharp as a tack. I heard that statement 1,000 times verbatim from all these different people. And behind closed doors, he is so on it. He's asking all the hard questions. He is definitely on it. He gets tired sometimes a little bit, sure. I mean, just almost like they're actually reading from a piece of paper, something like that. And then all of a sudden, come that June debate with President Trump, where it was on full display for everyone to see and you couldn't hide it anymore, instantaneously you saw them turn and now they say, oh, he can't actually make it, so we need to get rid of him and go with Kamala Harris. So in my view, the evidence is pretty strong that there was a concerted effort in the part of the Democrats to hide all this stuff, because there's zero chance that you can make a plausible argument that what we saw with our own eyes in that debate, and had seen many other times in public when he had given statements in the first half of the year, it was evident that there was some serious degeneration of his mental capacity. It was self-evident, but they kept saying no. And then when apparently they were ready to shift to Kamala Harris, now then they just said, oh yeah, he definitely can't. Well, there was a exchange he had just a couple of days ago about what's going on in the Russia-Ukraine war, and whether there should be a negotiated settlement or some kind of a ceasefire for Christmas, etc. I mean, honestly, he couldn't even put a sentence together. So I think it is significantly degraded even since that time. And obviously, I think that they're just hoping they can limp through to January 20th. They don't want to take they go through the trouble of, quote, embarrassing him on the way out, et cetera. And honestly, we have to pray that there is no crisis that demands, a president that can look forward and make decisions right now, life and death potentially on our country. I hope that doesn't happen. But I just think if we're being honest, no Republican, Democrat, anything, it's self-evident that there is some significant degeneration in the capacity there. And the right thing to do is for Joe Biden to step aside and say, hey, even if it's just for another month or so, it's time to let, pass the chains on to somebody who's there. Whether you like or don't like Kamala Harris, she is still completely coherent and can do the job there. But I just think it's
I don't know about completely coherent, but I take your I take your
I get
point.
what you're saying.
Completely coherent. Yeah, completely coherent. She's never been accused of being. But it reminded me of that great Groucho Marx sketch when Groucho's wife comes in, catches him in bed with his secretary, and he's denying everything, and he finally says, who are you going to believe, me or the evidence of your own eyes? And that's exactly how we've been played over the Biden affair. Yeah. But you're a man of war, which is why you don't like war. So let me turn to the wars, Colonel. On the Eastern Front, first, the Russians seem to be carrying all before them. On the battlefield, Ukraine is reduced more and more to terrorist attacks on civilian targets, flying drones into tower blocks, residential tower blocks. In Kazan, which I saw, I must have seen 50 times when I was in Kazan recently for the BRICS, a tall residential tower block. No purpose to bombing it at all, except to kill the people that lived there, making no impact on the course of the war at all. How could it? So how do you see that front, the Ukraine front? 4 weeks to go. How far will Putin advance in that 4 weeks? And how quickly will Donald Trump be able to get round a table with him?
Yeah, Mr. Galloway, the bottom line is point blank, the war is lost. Period. No caveats, no possibility of any other outcome. The only rational, moral, logical thing to do is to seek a negotiated deal on the best terms you can get for Kiev and just, end the destruction, end the killing. But instead, we're continuing on. The West primarily, Keir Starmer, Joe Biden, Macron, even still some in the German Federation there, they're continuing to, just shovel more and more ammunition and weapon in there with no idea what it's supposed to accomplish, what they're doing it for. And, this whole issue you're talking about right now with this attack in Kazan, and there was a couple of others on this, actually one other on the same day into Russia. And that was in response to just the previous day when Russia had attacked basically the KGB, CIA kind of version of what was in the special services in Kiev. And they hit part of the missile, whether it was intended or not. I don't have enough information to know, but it did hit a civilian target inside of Kiev, along with the actual SBU building. And so this was their response to that. But then you have to ask, even that, towards what end? What are you trying to accomplish? Russia was responding with that strike on the 20th to the last round of ATACMS long-range missiles that were fired into Russia. And Putin keeps saying there will be consequences for each one of these. And so far, he has been good to his word, but he hasn't escalated beyond because I think he does want the war to be over. So as soon as Trump can get in, I think he's ready to have a negotiated settlement. But here's a big problem with the potential for that. If you have Trump coming in thinking he's going to have some kind of leverage over Putin and he's going to have some kind of a good outcome that Zelensky can live with, that might be happy about, we could be in for a difficult negotiation because Vladimir Putin has been very clear and reiterated it within the last week or so that the minimum set that they're even going to talk about is if you abandon all of the 4 oblasts that they annexed in 2022, that there is denuclearization of the of whatever's resulting from Kiev, and that it never joined NATO. And so those are the minimum beginning statements for Putin. Now, if Trump is not willing to enter into that, if he says, well, I'll just put more stuff in there, I'll just put more pressure on you, then Putin will go, I wish you wouldn't do it, but okay, if you want to, that's your prerogative. We on our end will continue this methodical push to the West, and eventually there won't be anything to negotiate. Russia will eventually capture all the territory that Putin's wants because they can. They have the capacity, they have the manpower, they definitely have the political will, and though Ukraine's side doesn't want to, and they want to get stuff from the West, it doesn't matter at this point how much stuff the West gives, because it's all about manpower. And if you don't have a trained army, it doesn't matter how much equipment that you have. You can't defeat the side that has equipment, ammunition, and manpower. And Russia has probably somewhere close to 800,000 more men than Ukraine does in uniform today, and of course millions more if they ever need it, if it needs to get to that. There is no rational path that you should ever say, let's fight one more day for an objective that can never be accomplished. And the only thing we do, Mr. Galloway, this is one of the things that just really gets me more than anything and makes me angry, is that by doing this political issue to continue providing for the war and giving funds to Zelensky and all this, all it does is increase the cost of their eventual failure. It won't change it. There'll be more men killed, more territory lost, more buildings destroyed, because we won't acknowledge reality.
And more of our money burned, of course. Biden is writing a farewell check of God knows how many billions to Zelensky, the British government, who are presiding over the freezing to death of our own old age pensioners this winter, are giving money hand over fist to a guy who's already lost. I mean, talk about reinforcing failure. Finally, Colonel, you know, I know you don't follow the British Armed Forces as closely as you follow the American, but if I were to tell you that the Telegraph revealed today that in the last year, 16,000 British soldiers have left the army, that our entire armed forces, Army, Navy and Air Force, would fit into a mid-table football stadium and still have room for a whole herd of elephants at the back, that our jewel in the crown of the Royal Navy, the HM Queen Elizabeth, is out for a year and even in an emergency would not be in a position to fight for 6 months, even if they just band-aided it. Why do you think the British government swaggers around like Mussolini used to do, threatening people with Hitler's army? The British government goes around threatening people with America's army, because we sure ain't able to threaten them with our own army. What do you make of this? This is, by the way, Colonel, after a 6% wage increase and further payments to aid retention, people are flooding out of the British Armed Forces. My apologies for interrupting you.
Yeah, no, I think that there's probably a lot of similarities between what's happening in the U.S. Armed Forces. Maybe the numbers aren't quite as large, but we're having the same problems recruiting. And I think probably at the heart of it, it's the same issue, is that, look, when I joined in the 1985, first of all, as a private, before I even became an officer, I did it out of patriotic duty to my country. And I wanted to defend our country and our way of life and was willing to risk my life if it ever came to that, because I thought it was worth it. But today, and especially since 9/11, things have just gone in the toilet since 9/11, because no longer is it defend your country and serve with honor. It's like, hey, we're just going to throw you out in the middle of Syria and just leave you there, even though none of our national security effort is involved, or even though it's illegal for us to even be there. But yeah, whatever. And we're going to be in the Middle East, and these thousands, we're going to continue to threaten possibly war with Russia and get ready for that. Then we're talking about it in the Indo-Pacific. We might even go to war with China. When nobody wants to go to war with China or Russia or Iran or North Korea or any of this other mess. And they're saying, why would I want to join a military like that? And so I think that they're leaving because they see it's no longer about the patriotic duty that I still to this day am very proud of. But I wouldn't join today. I wouldn't do it today because I don't have the confidence in the leadership. I've seen them lie to the American people routinely. And I'm talking about the generals, people in uniform, not just the Department of Defense. And I think I've seen similar things in the British side too. And I bet, and you're right, I don't have as much fidelity on this, but I suspect that a lot of the same things are occurring to the British men, especially, that they don't want to serve in a place like that and potentially lose their lives in the defense of God only knows what they're doing, you know, in different deployments.
Yeah, dying for Keir Starmer would never be a good idea for anyone. Colonel Daniel Davis, as always, a great tour de force. Thank you very much for joining us.